guys, welcome to KHALEELA'S TV, where we discuss tips and tricks on bettering ourselves and showing up in the world as better human beings. Today we're going to be discussing friendship and business. The reason that I decided to discuss this topic is because for many people who know about the Joe Budden Podcast, there has been a huge blow up for the podcast where the co-hosts decided to branch off and do their own thing, leaving Joe Budden to find people to replace them nonetheless. And it's been in the media a lot. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of what's going on, I'll give you a little backstory. But nonetheless, this is not going to be a video that's centered around the mixy stuff that's happening over at Joe and his podcast. This is just us kind of discussing, what are the lessons? What are the things that we can take away from someone else's experience without judging or bashing them for what they're going through or what they've been through. So welcome. My name is KHALEELA, and let's just jump right into it. So we're going to talk about the backstory of the Joe Budden Podcast, and then we're going to talk about the things that you should focus on when you're deciding to start a business with a family or a friend. So for those of you who don't know about the Joe Budden Podcast, it's a podcast that I think it's been around for about 10 years now. They say they've been building the podcast, and it's something that Joe Budden started. Rory came along, and then later on down the line, Mal came along, another co-host came along, and when they came along, they kind of just, were having fun with the podcast. Not that they weren't taking it too seriously. They were just like, they were having fun. So they were going to have fun and kind of see where it went. Now, where it went was somewhere really, really big, and money got involved. A lot of money got involved, and Joe, the owner of the podcast, he was kind of turning down money. Something happened about 4 years ago where there was some missing money, and Rory Mal, his co-host, wanted answers on that. It was something that was addressed but was not addressed to their liking. So it kind of built up over time, where they decided to separate and go their separate ways. Now, the way in which it was done, it was a little bit chaotic, but nonetheless, they did what they had to do. Now, if you are, a mixy mix and you kind of want to know what I'm talking about, you can check the links in the description box. I have all the details and stuff for you to check that out. Trust me, I watched it all. I myself is a mixy mix, but I just want to kind of share the takeaways from whatever is going on, right? So that is the backstory of the Joe Budden Podcast. Now we're going to talk about the things that you want to make sure that you go over and discuss with your family and your friends before you jump into business with them. First and foremost, you want to discuss boundaries. You want to discuss what is a part of the business, what is not a part of the business, what can be talked about during business hours, what can't be talked about during business hours, what are the business hours and what aren't the business hours. You want to be able to create these boundaries within the friendship, because it's no longer just friendship. There's now business and work and money involved into something else. You want to be able to bring up that part of you that so the part of you that would show up to work. You want to incorporate that a little bit into this dynamic. Somebody who's more responsible, somebody who pays attention to what's happening with their money, with the way they conduct themselves when they're in an office, when they're in business. You want to kind of bring that part to the friendship, because now it's no longer just friendship. But I say boundaries because I remember, just to piggyback on the whole Joe Budden thing, Rory said something in his interview. He said there were personal things that I've been through in my life that I didn't really want it discussed on the podcast, but Joe discussed it anyway. Now, that definitely tells me that there was a boundary issue here where either Rory did not state the boundary clear and say, hey, look, this is my personal life. This is personal stuff. We're not going to talk about that while we're at work recording. We're not going to talk about that, while we're at work, because that's personal stuff that have other effects on my life. That was something that I told you, in like just with me and you, and thinking that, I was just in confidential or whatever you want to call it, be my confidant, whatever you want to call it. But that stuff we're not going to talk about while we're on set, right? And he talked about it. Now, it could have been a boundary issue where Rory didn't explain the boundary, or where Joe didn't respect the boundary. So what could have also happened is he could have expressed it to Joe, and Joe was like, I don't care. I'm just gonna go on and I'm gonna do and say what I want to do and say. Which I don't think that's what happened based on the way how it played out. I personally feel like Joe just wasn't aware of the boundary. So that's what I mean, where we say we want to discuss what are the boundaries, what is work, what isn't work, what can we discuss at work, what are we not discussing at work, how many hours out of my day should I be dedicating to the side hustle, because one person can be putting in 90 hours and the other person is only putting in 2 hours, and it's like, oh, well, now we're just in business. I mean, if that's what you have set up, where you only need someone for 2 hours, then that's fine, but let that boundary be clear. Let the boundary be clear as to who is investing what and how long they're going to be investing into that, which segues me into the next thing that you guys need to discuss. You guys need to discuss roles. Who is what? Who is in charge of what? Everyone cannot be the manager. Everyone cannot be the boss. If you're running a restaurant business, someone has to be the chef. Someone has to be the checkout person. Someone has to be the person who shares the food. Someone has to be the person who washes the dishes. There are so many different roles other than just being a boss and a manager, and everyone needs to have their assigned roles. Someone is going to hold the camera. Someone is going to do the editing. Someone is going to do the talking. Somebody's going to have to do the scripting. The list goes on and on and on. And once each party is able to identify their roles, then they'll know how to execute it. And if they aren't executing their roles, because the roles are clearly defined, then you can say, hey, bud, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. What's happening here? Or you can say, hey, bud, you are coming over to my side trying to cook when you're not even the chef. Can I be the chef and you just keep doing what you need to do over there, whether it's the cashier or the manager or whatever role you're playing, but you're able to identify your role, play your role, and show up for your role, and tell other people to let you play your role and not try to show up in your role. The reason why I brought this up is because in the Joe Budden podcast, it was there was an example where I think Joe was trying to do a business ad deal or some kind of deal, but Rory was also trying to discuss the same deal. So I feel like the boundaries weren't clearly set, where it's like, okay, well, you know what? I am the person who put the business suit on. I go out, I get the deals. You just show up for the podcast. Or it could be different roles where you guys say, right, in your group, in your family setting, we all can play this role. Right? We can all go out there and find business needs. We can all go out there, find advertisers and find customers. However, if I am negotiating with one customer, you are not allowed to negotiate with that customer. And when we are negotiating with customers, this is the bare minimum that we're going to take. You know what I mean? Create those roles, create the standard by which you're going to hold your company up to, and let it be known to the people that you work with and to the customers that you're going to have. So create those roles, let the roles be known so that everyone can fall in line. There's no reason why the cashier needs to be cooking the food. There is no reason why the person who is supposed to be sweeping the floors, who's supposed to be taking out the trash, cleaning the bathroom, taking care of their duties and their roles, why there's no reason why they should be the ones stirring the soup and doing all this other stuff. No, know your role and play it correctly so that the business can be successful. Each person has to play their role. All right. Now the next thing, I created a list. Let me look at my list because I'm kind of forgetting. Okay, contracts. How did I forget that? You want to draft up a contract with your family, with your friends, even if it's just a contract that you write out where it clearly states that this is the person's role, this is their duties, this is what they agreed to. If you can have the person sign it, that's even better, because again, you're going into business. Let me tell you this, when you go into corporate America, when you go into, not even corporate America, when you go into apply for a job, you sign that job application. Before you work your first day, you sign on board that you're agreeing to work with this company, you're agreeing to do this thing. So let's incorporate that into our business, right? Okay, this is your roles, these are what you agreed to. All right, sign here. That's what you agreed to. Because what that does, the contract, it holds everyone accountable. Because what I find with business and friendship and business and family, which is why I personally try to stay away from it, people drop the ball. And when they drop the ball and you want something to be successful, you're left carrying everything. And you don't want to be that person that's left carrying everything, but you also don't want to leave your family carrying your weight. So create the contracts where each and every one can hold everyone accountable for what they should and should not be doing in the according to what you guys agreed. Sometimes people just forget. People forget that they said that they would have done this. If it's not something that's clearly written out, they'll forget. So you want to be able to draw your contract and be like, look, you said you were going to do this. So I need you to do this so that we can become successful. I need you to do this so that we can grow. Now, contracts, whether money is involved or not, I think a contract is needed. Now, however you guys want to negotiate the money, percentages, salary, and everything like that, I think you definitely should include that into your contracts. But even if, let's say, money isn't on the table, right? You guys are just starting something for fun or anything like that, put into the contract that, okay, when money is on the table, when we start receiving payment for whatever it is that we're doing for the business, we will then have a conversation. We will then have a meeting about percentages, about salaries, about who gets what. If you can't have that conversation, initially, okay, well, you know what, the chef, you're getting paid this much per month. Or, you know what, you're cooking the food, you're the chef, I'll give you 30%, 40%, 50% of our earnings. I'll take this, I'll give this person that, whatever. If you can't have those conversations up front because money is not on the table, and I would love to have it up front, but if you can't, then once money becomes involved and once you guys are making money, it has to be clearly written in the contract that, okay, well, we're gonna then have a sit down where we discuss and negotiate percentages, and we sit and we discuss, different things that we need in terms of money and salary and all of that thing. And if you do need a third party person present, then get the opinions of someone who does money management, get the opinions of a lawyer, get the opinions of a therapist if there are things happening within the family structure, which they will, that causes issues. You want to be able to outsource and get certain things that will make it better, but like I said, contracts are definitely needed. Negotiate those contracts, get those things written, even if you don't type it out. And again, I did like kind of segue into something else where I mentioned third-party people. If your business is blowing up and all of that, you want to get third-party opinions. You want to get the opinions of an accountant. You want to get the opinions of a lawyer. You want to get the opinions of a therapist. If you guys are just having issues where you guys aren't able to get along, right? You want to get suggestions so that the business can thrive and be successful. All right. Now, another thing that I had was needing to check the egos. Before you go into business, you need to check your ego. And I have a book that I would really recommend to anyone who, whether you're starting a business or not, it's called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. I'll put it here for you guys to check it out. I listened to it through Audible. I think I listened to it twice. I'm like kind of listening to it now, like on and off. But in that book, he really tells us a lot about the ego and why we need to humble ourselves, why we need to show up and understand that there is always a bigger goal than just our needs and our wants and what we can get out of something. So I feel like really listening to that book and understanding what your ego is so that you can identify when your ego is showing up or identify when the ego is showing up in other people, you'll be able to better navigate the situation when it comes to your family and friends. Because what point that he brought up in the book that was very important was he was just like, the ego will make people feel like, I'm too good to be doing this. I don't need to be I'm too good for this. I'm too good to be cleaning the stove. I'm too good to be sweeping up. I'm too good to be washing the dishes. I'm too good for this. But if we're able to kind of humble ourselves, especially when starting a family business, a business in terms of friendship and stuff like that, and focus on the big picture, like, there's money to be made. We're trying to get to the 6 figures. We're trying to get to the 7 figures. We're trying to get that. So therefore, it doesn't matter if you have to sweep the floor tonight or sweep the floor or wipe the stove or whatever. These little things are minuscule in terms of what the long-term goal is, what the bigger picture is. So it's like that book is kind of just checking in and making us like, if you're starting a business with your family, it makes us humble ourselves and be like, okay, well, I'm not too big to do this. I'm not too big to help out here. I'm not too big to do these little things. And I feel like the reason why I really wanted to bring up check your ego is because a lot of things that happened in the podcast with the big blow up, it spoke a lot to ego. Everyone's egos were hurt. Joe, Rory, and Mal, everyone's egos were hurt. I feel like their egos were also leading the show, and they forgot about the bigger picture. They forgot that, it's millions to be made. It's millions of people watching us, listening to us, who care about us. So let's just squash the petty beef. And they couldn't, right? They couldn't. And I don't want to call it petty beef because at the end of the day, what's petty to you could be big to someone else. So I don't want to say that. Nonetheless, I do want to say if they were able to kind of humble themselves, all three, and kind of realize that, hey, there's a bigger picture here, and let's focus on how we can get to our end goal and stuff like that, they would have been able to better navigate the situation. Like, I feel like with, just to bring up a specific example, the fact that Joe, and I know that he regrets this because he took down the pod where he fires them on air, but even just firing your co-host on air, like, that's not something that, that should have been done. Not because you're not entitled to feel how you feel. Joe is entitled to feel however he wants to feel in that situation. It's just that the way in which you go about and handle your feelings after that is what can either make or break a situation. So he was feeling very frustrated. He was very angry and he was very upset about a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes. And what he did, just for those of you who don't know, he went on and he publicly fired them and brought up a whole bunch of things that I'm pretty sure he's not proud of bringing up, but nonetheless it happened. And I feel like with doing that, not only was his ego kind of leading the show, he hurt the others' egos, right? Because now you're publicly talking about me, you're publicly bashing me, you're publicly firing me, you're publicly doing all these different things, and everyone feels offended. And once everyone is feeling offended, embarrassed, on defense and all of that, you're not going to solve any problems. Another important point that he brought up in this book is whenever there's adversity between you and someone else, you want to speak to that person privately. Because when you speak to that person in front of an audience, or you speak to that person publicly in front of other people, you're now putting that person on defense. Now that person's ego is bruised. Now that person feel embarrassed. Now that person feel like they have to respond to you in a way that one-ups whatever you're saying, and they may not receive authentically what you're saying. So another thing that you want to keep in mind that I learned from this book was, if you do have adversity within your business, within your family, within your friends, it's not wise for you to discuss that problem amongst others. You want to pull that person aside, one-on-one, discuss privately what the issues are, come to a realistic resolution that is going to be beneficial for both parties, and then integrate back the group into the conversation, because now the issues, the real underlying issues, have been addressed. So that's another reason why I said really and truly checking the ego is very important for starting a business with your family and friends, because you want to be able to identify when it's going to hinder the success of your business. Now, lastly, this is something that I feel like you should have within the relationship already before even starting to decide to go into business with someone, but we just want to include it there. There needs to be trust, and there needs to be understanding. I won't get into respect and all the other stuff, because all the other stuff needs to be there. You know what I mean? But trust and understanding needs to be there. I need to trust, you need to be able to trust that, okay, well, this person has my best interest at heart when it comes to the friendship and the business, and they should be able to trust and understand that you have their best interest at heart when it comes to the business and the friendship. And once you're able to have a trust and then understand that, okay, well, you know what, I'm going to be open to your perspective, because we don't all see things through the same lens. Some of us see things differently. Some of us feel things differently. Some of us understand things differently. If we're all open to understanding each other, and open to listening to your perspective, receiving what I can and releasing what I can, and also being able to share my perspective so that you can understand my version, and of course taking what you can and leaving what you can, then the relationship will kind of work better. And I feel like a lot of the long-term issues, a lot of the long-term things that people who jump into business and friendship face will now disappear, because you've taken care of it head on. All right, so that was my Joe Budden Rory Mal rant. Hopefully you guys were able to get some real gems from there, right? My hope is to take things that happen in the real world, in society, and learn from them, use them as tools to make us better human beings, not just criticize, judge, laugh at, and be entertained by the nonsense of it, because everything happens for a reason, and we can all choose to learn from it. So I hope that you were able to take these little gems away that I took away from watching the whole thing play out publicly, and decide to incorporate these things if I choose to start a business with a friend or with a family member. Now, if you have already started a business with your family member or your friend, share down in the comment section, what are some things that you guys do? What are some tips and tricks that you have in terms of making the friendship and the business relationship successful because there are going to be adversities that come up, but the things that you do to overcome these adversities and come to a quick resolution within your business and within your friendship so that things can thrive and be successful for you and your friend. Share that down in the comment section just so that we can see, because you know we all want it. And don't forget to like, share, and comment on this video, and I will see you guys next time. Good luck with you, your friends. Good luck with you and your family. Bye.